If somebody were to ask me which genre of horror has the most beautiful women, I'd have to say Giallo films. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage stars Sam Damas, Susie Kendall, and is directed by Dario Argento. What's up, guys? Big day. I love talking about Giallo films, or especially films directed by Dario Argento. And luckily I get to review Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't for Steve, better known as 80s Film Fan on YouTube. He sent me that Blu-ray right there. I watched this movie last night. I really appreciate it. Very kind of you, sir. So anyway, big shout out to him. So let's get into this review. First, let's talk about some plot points here. What is this movie about? So Sam Damas, he plays Tony. He is an aspiring writer. He is over in Rome visiting his girlfriend, and he's having writer's block. So he's going to go back to America. And on his way out, he sees, like in this art gallery, behind this window, a murder happening. He sees this woman struggling with this man. And so he's helpless. He can't get in there to save her. She almost dies, but luckily she doesn't, and because he calls the cops, and so the cops are able to save the day. And he decides, you know what, I can't get this murder out of my head. He's going to bed at night and he's constantly having these like flashbacks and these dreams. And so he wants to stay until the murder is solved. Plus, that's some good writing points for him. But as you guessed, he stays there. Some murders start piling up. There are more victims along the way. And so throughout this whole thing, this case is literally driving him mad. Now, first, let's get into a little bit of the backstory of Bird with the Crystal Plumage. This is Dario Argento's directorial debut. The guy was in his late 20s at the time when he directed this movie. And I can't help but think of like John Carpenter, who was in his late 20s when he directed Halloween. Now, Halloween wasn't his first movie. But, you know, there's some similarities there. You know, you had two like directing titans, and they were really at the top of their game. And so Bird with the Crystal Plumage was groundbreaking because it kicked open the doors for the Giallo genre. And if you don't know what Giallo is, literally it means yellow in Italian. But really, a Giallo film is usually a murder mystery, and there is a black coated killer, usually with black gloves. It's very common in the genre. And these, for the most part, are pretty stylistic types of films, thanks to Dario Argento. He is the reason why this genre really just, really skyrocketed in the 70s and 80s. It ended in the 80s, and funny enough, we haven't really seen a comeback of Giallo films. But another reason why I compare it to John Carpenter is because Halloween did the same thing for the slasher genre. It wasn't the first slasher, but it was the most groundbreaking. It kicked the doors open, and then all of a sudden you had the slasher craze throughout the 80s. But also, it's nice when a new, young, fresh director comes in because, it changes the landscape up. It's a different way of thinking about directing a film. Before Plumage, directors weren't doing what Dario Argento did for the genre. This is a director that was much more creative, much more stylistic with his choices. He thought outside the box, and movies before Plumage were just more traditional in style. Still some great movies. But, like I said, it's just nice when somebody kicks the doors open and tries some different things. Now, Argento had a lot of help with this because the score in this movie is done by none other than Ennio Morricone. You will notice his scores like immediately. He just has such a signature style. There's almost a little bit of like a Western vibe to his scores. But the score is beautiful in this movie. I loved it. Also, since we're talking about, stylistic directing, the kills in this movie are really interesting. One of the kills that I want to talk about is one that we've seen copied a million times over in future Giallo films, where you have the lady, she's half naked, laying on her bed, and then the killer comes in with a knife, rips off her panties, and throws them off the bed. That's something I've seen in some other Giallo films. One was Slaughter Hotel, actually, and I'm sure there's others. I haven't seen a lot of Giallo films, but the ones I've seen similar types of kills. But there's one kill where it kind of puts you in the perspective of the victim. Like, you feel like the victim because the killer has his knife and he's literally like dashing it towards the viewer. So it gives you a little taste of what it must feel like to be in that situation, which is pretty damn scary. Now, normally when I do older movies, they're spoiler reviews, okay? But I'm gonna go ahead and give you a spoiler warning before we go any further, because the ending of this movie is a big twist. And I wanna talk about it because I love the twist. So you have been warned. Now, the ending of this movie really surprised the hell out of me. Did not see this coming whatsoever. When Sam is at that window, he's seeing this murder transpire. He got it flipped. It was the woman that was actually killing the man. But, you know, our natural instinct is to think that the woman is in danger. And plus the man, you know, he's dressed like a killer. The way he's dressed, you would buy that he was the killer over the woman. But it just so happens that Monica was the killer. She was batshit crazy. The reason she was a killer was because I guess years before she saw this painting of this murder. And she related more to the killer than the actual victim. So I think it just kind of sent her over the edge. Now, the last thing I want to talk about really is Dario Argento and his directing style. For a first movie, he does a damn good job. There are a lot of stylistic shots throughout this movie. As a matter of fact, a lot of times you'll see, like, you know, photo snapshots throughout. You know, he uses whatever kind of tool he needs to tell the story. Even for today, watching this movie, the directing felt really creative, really, I guess, out of the box. And so for a movie that's almost 50 years old, I thought that was pretty damn cool. Now, as far as any cons, unfortunately, I've seen Tenebrae and I've seen Suspiria, and those movies are like masterpieces to me. Was this movie as good as those? No, I don't think it was, but it was still highly enjoyable, and I would definitely give it a purchase worthy, especially if you are into collecting Dario Argento's movies. This is definitely one that you want to have. So anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on The Bird with the Crystal Plumage? Looking forward to hearing them. Also, thanks again to 80s Film Fan Steve. Really appreciate you hooking me up with that Blu-ray. Come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. On Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and now Stardust. If you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.